A lot has been talked about on the war on terror. What is a better way? Well, there just might be a third way. There's a new book by Pulitzer Prize winner David Rhode. He worked for the New York Times for years. He now is a foreign affairs columnist for Reuters and The Atlantic. His new book is called Beyond War, Reimagining American Influence in the New Middle East. David Rhode, welcome to the Big 550 KTRS here in St. Louis.
Thanks so much for having me on.
There's a lot to get to, but I would be remiss in telling people that you have not only lived this, you were kidnapped while in Afghanistan for a number of months, were you not?
It's true, and let me first say, my grandfather's from St. Louis. He's a proud graduate of University City High School, and I visited St. Louis a lot as a child, so thank you for having me on.
You got it. Once a St. Louisan, always a St. Louisan.
Yes, I was kidnapped by the Taliban for 7 months, and it does give me a certain bias in that I saw I've seen Islam at its best and at its worst. Its worst was these kind of guards who had these delusional ideas. During my 7 months in captivity, they really believed that the 9/11 attacks were staged, and that there was this vast Christian and Hindu and Jewish conspiracy to obliterate Islam from the face of the earth. The good side was I was kidnapped with an Afghan journalist. He helped me escape from captivity after 7 months. We had been taken into the mountains of Pakistan, and we made it to a Pakistani military base. And this brave young Pakistani Army captain led us on the base. I'm still in touch with that Army captain. He actually friended me on Facebook. So this is how, the world's changing and the two sides of the region that exist.
Sure. David Rhode is our guest. The book is called Beyond War. And, David, you make a brilliant point in this book numerous times. And one of the points you make is that we are missing a major component to the war on terror. We're not using our most influential levers, including being an American. We've stopped exporting America.
It's true. We are the best in the world at tech, the best in the world at venture capital. We're getting great advances in energy with fracking and everything else, and we're great at venture capital. And these polls show that people in the region do not like it when we invade, which is understandable. They do admire American business practices, and they also admire American sort of political ideals, which we can get into later. But, the big issue there is jobs, and 60% of the population in the Middle East is under the age of 30. The World Bank estimates that if 10 million new jobs aren't created by 2020, unemployment levels are going to explode. And I'm not saying we should give aid, and we've heard this before. It's trade. Is there a way for American companies to export to the Middle East and create jobs here that also help revive economies in the region as well? So
you're saying treat the Middle East like China, in a sense.
Absolutely, and don't make it solely about terrorism. In Pakistan, where I spent a lot of time, the people there felt it's this transactional relationship where we would give a lot of military aid to the Pakistani army so they would let us carry out these drone strikes. And there was a sense in the population, what about us? And shifting away from Pakistan, which has a lot of problems and, arguably is a good market but not a great one, Indonesia, the largest Muslim country in the world, has a booming economy. The private airline in Indonesia last month, they bought $22 billion worth of Boeing aircraft. A couple days later, they bought $24 billion worth of European aircraft, of Airbus planes. China, in 2011, exported $150 billion to the Middle East. That's about twice of what American companies exported. And lastly, the U.S. exports more now to the United Arab Emirates. That's where Dubai is. We export more to UAE than we do to all of India. So there are opportunities in the more stable corners of the region.
Beyond War is the book. David Rhode is our guest. Why has this fallen on deaf ears? Why have they not been able to do this? Why were we able to rebuild Europe and Japan after World War II, and yet this idea of building the Middle East through trade and through commerce, why hasn't that worked?
It's harder, to be fair to both the Bush and the Obama administrations. They didn't have suicide bombers in Germany and Japan, setting off, bombs
right.
as we were trying to revive those economies. I do think that we had stronger institutions. I think we had a stronger kind of focus on economics, a stronger State Department, stronger U.S. Agency for National Development, and I think we weren't so divided politically. I talked to people. So President Bush, proposed something called the Millennium Challenge Corporation. It creates incentives where we only give aid to countries if they enact political reforms, and it really tries to move towards trade with countries and creating viable economies. Hillary Clinton talks about the same thing. She calls it economic statecraft, but it's all kind of died out in a lot of partisan rancor in Washington. And some people say the Obama people could have done a better job of selling the idea to Congress. But we're paralyzed. The most common adjective I hear about the State Department today is risk aversion. They're afraid of making any mistake and having like a Benghazi-like scandal explode. And we have to take risks if we're going to be effective in the region.
David Rhode is our guest. The book is called Beyond War. I have to ask you about the cover of the book. It's a man, clearly a Muslim gentleman, on a camel on a cell phone. Is that staged in any way, shape, or form?
No, it's not staged. That was a real picture that someone took. But the choice was absolutely clear that, this is a changing region. Iran can't keep, information out of, that they tried to stop. I mean, they succeeded in crushing the Green Revolution, but still hundreds of thousands of Iranians were sort of out on the streets. I still think that regime is unstable. Mubarak couldn't, stop Facebook and Twitter. So technology is changing things. I don't want to sound too Pollyannish and too idealistic, but there's been real gains in some areas in development. The Gates Foundation, the Clinton Global Initiative have done a lot of improvements in health in sub-Saharan Africa. Microfinance is this big growth area. Again, from the conservative side, promoting entrepreneurship is getting people to start small and medium-sized businesses. None of those advances move over and become part of our government because it's all so paralyzed, and everyone's so afraid of wasting a dollar here or giving aid potentially to the wrong person, and it'll all blow up politically.
David Rhode, our guest. The book is called Beyond War, winner of 2 Pulitzer Prizes. It's winner of the Pulitzer Prize, I should say. Also, David, I want to get to something you say, and it's just the other way of looking at the problem. Since 9/11, we've taken it to the Arab world with guns. You say in this book, Beyond War, that there is no amount of American soldiers that will eradicate Muslim extremists, and you say the only way it will be stomped out is by Muslim moderates.
I really believe that, and you talk to people in the region, and I'm sorry if I'm being repetitive, but they want to be, they're proud to be Muslim, but they also want to be modern, and they don't want to be dictated to by American soldiers, but they don't want to live under these jihadists. We spent $1.2 trillion in Iraq and Afghanistan since 2001. 95% of that money went to the military effort. It's hugely expensive to deploy American troops on the ground. Where I think more effective is when there's local forces that we are sort of training and supplying and funding. It's much more effective to have the Pakistani military carry out an operation and clear out a village than it is to have Americans go in and do it, because it becomes this issue of foreign troops trying to take over, their country, and these issues of sovereignty come up. And, I believe these moderates, exist. Benazir Bhutto, who was killed by militants, was the female prime minister of Pakistan. Bassem Youssef, I don't know if people have heard of him. He's the Jon Stewart of Egypt. He has an incredibly popular TV show that's just like Jon Stewart's, but it's in Egypt. And the Muslim Brotherhood, the president, there were charges filed against him for insulting the president. And these are sort of the moderates that I think are, we should listen to and see, how we can help them. Maybe we should do nothing at times, but maybe there's other ways we can help them through training or investment or other programs.
David Rhode is our guest. He's a Pulitzer Prize winner, also now currently the foreign affairs columnist for Reuters and The Atlantic. His new book is Beyond War. Back in a moment on the Big 550 KTRS.